الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الخلق سيدنا المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم افتح علينا فتحا مبينا وارزقنا رزقا طيبا مباركا كريما. رب اشرح لنا صدورنا ويسر لنا أمورنا واحلل لنا عقدا من ألسنتنا يفقهوا قولنا. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا وحبيبنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. For everybody here, welcome. And also those our dear sisters and brothers who joined us online, welcome as well. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, it's a blessing to start this new year, new academic year, and a new series, bi'idhnillah, all by the permission of Allah, the infinitely merciful, infinitely compassionate, who ultimately is the teacher for all of us. وَيُعَلِّمُكُمُ اللَّهُ, right? وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَيُعَلِّمُكُمُ اللَّهُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks of a great blessing of ilm, of knowledge that can elevate and beautify us in our journeys, because we're born ignorant. The default state of the human being is ignorance. And there's nothing more beautiful than being humble enough to recognize it. And then to open our ears and our faculties, the intellect that Allah has endowed us with, and the heart with which to process the ilm. The knowledge is really processed by the heart, even though the initial processing takes care at the level of the intellect. But it requires a great deal of humility to open up, to receive, and then to commit and sweat. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks of a beautiful criterion, because our ilm, our knowledge in our deen is different than materialistic earthly knowledge. He says subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ, fear Allah, be conscious of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and rest assured Allah will teach. Allah Himself will teach. This is amazing. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we become worthy recipients and students of Him, and to revere Him, that He endows us and pours into us from His divine knowledge, that we're able to grow and refine and become really servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that we don't miss our purpose. I want to begin this series, and again, welcome to all of you. Jazakumullah khair. May Allah reward you for your efforts and for being here. Before I begin, I remind everybody about intentions, because intentions in the heart shape the outcomes, shape the destiny, shapes what happens in this experience. And oftentimes when we enter into new experiences, a classroom, doing our homework, meeting with a teacher, having a conversation with a friend, it doesn't matter what the activity is. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to start that with an intention. That thought in the heart shapes what happens in the interaction and in the experience. Oftentimes we enter something, we say, and then we leave it, then we don't even know what we've gained from it. It's like a fog in our lives, something that is just vague. You got into it, you left, and you don't even know what happened, right? Or you forget about it. It caused no growth. It's just another activity added to the plethora of activities that we've engaged in our lives. How much of a loss is that? That here you are, you've committed an hour of your life towards something sacred, something amazing, something powerful, something that could become infinite in its power to transform you, and yet we've missed out on it. What's the key then? How do I tap into right now this hour of learning, not because of me, not because of anybody else, but because of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and us coming to learn about something sacred? He placed within it something infinite. The treasures in this opportunity right now, in the moments that are before us, is infinite. But we're accustomed to finite experiences. You do A, you get B. You study, you get a grade, right? You speak to somebody to try to persuade them with some kind of an argument. Maybe the outcome is they're convinced. It's finite. Then it goes away. And if it lasts for the duration of this life. It's finite. All measurements, all interactions, all experiences on this earth are finite, even in terms of their effect and outcome. It doesn't last beyond, let's say, the duration of life on this earth. That's it. However, Allah has blessed us with the opportunity to turn every experience into something infinite. Infinite. Can you imagine? Infinite in its blessings, in its impact. And you might say, well, I don't see the infiniteness of it. Allah will show you one day. When you come out of this life, how the tiniest of actions, maybe it was a smile. A smile is finite. I smile, I'm no longer smiling. It took a second. How did it affect your heart? Maybe here we go. You smiled for a second. You were happy for a couple of seconds, right? Then it went away because you remembered you have homework for tomorrow, right? The joy got replaced with sadness or anxiety right away. It's fine. You see, even our feeling of fear or loss, everything is temporary. Yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised that smile of yours, because when you smiled it, you wanted to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That was an intention in the heart. Nobody knows it but the Creator. That smile becomes like a tree that continues to shed fruits on you and onto the creation of Allah in ways that are beyond your imagination for the rest of time into the next world. From a smile, yes. Outcomes are on Allah, all rest on intentions. So let us start with a powerful intention that we're here for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That we hold also a good opinion of Allah and high trust that this hour is not just an hour. It's an hour that can really elevate us, that whatever we attain from it in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can propel us forward into dimensions that we don't even see with our eyes. Can you think like that? That this is going to be a powerful experience, not again because of what is said, but because of the spirit that Allah puts in it. How many of us will remember that gatherings of ilm, of knowledge, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam stated that Allah is so happy with them that He showers the gathering with His mercy, with His compassion. Can you pause and think about this right now? We need compassion, the compassion of Allah. Every moment, without it we cannot live. And here you're promised of something infinite in its magnitude. Allah's care on you right now. Right now, His rahmah, His love, His affection, it's engulfing you. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so happy that He surrounds a gathering like this with angels. Can you imagine angels pouring on you right now from the heavens, commanded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to come and encircle a gathering like this just because we came with an intention to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Pause and think about that. That these angels will report back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala about the beautiful news of finding people remembering Allah. And that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself is mentioning them fil mala'il a'la, in the highest company. That He looks at the gathering and He says, I'm so happy with them, all of them are forgiven. Can you imagine that for a minute? And then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was asked, well, what if a person stumbled on the gathering who didn't intend to be there? Stumbled on the gathering. Like they came to pick up a book, they sat down, they were not intending to be here. Will they receive this forgiveness of Allah? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam answers by saying, this gathering is so blessed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the people in it intending to come and learn for Allah's sake and remember Allah are so worthy to Allah, so beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that anybody in their company will be forgiven. This is amazing. Sometimes we don't even know how to become better in our lives, how to become righteous. We think it's not for me. I don't know. These people look too angelic for me. You know, if you're just around them. Allah is so generous, He'll forgive you and elevate you. That's the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All that attained just by showing up. Absolutely. And the rest is beyond your imagination. I'm keen on reminding everybody at the beginning of this journey, at the beginning of this class, for the rest of this semester, rest of this year, of this very important thing, because it makes all the difference in what is going to happen to our hearts and souls. The rest is not, wallahi, it's not in our power. Otherwise, it's just words. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us a powerful, righteous entrance into this. And makhraj sadq, a powerful, righteous, intentional exit out of this experience, that it pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That every soul here pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That Allah anchors that desire to please Him in every heart and soul here. That you receive blessings beyond your imagination, just by you showing up. That Allah forgives you, heals you, elevates you, and that you are mentioned in the highest company right now. Just pause on that a little bit. Renew your intention, inshallah, and hold on to that thought of, seeking to please Allah. Okay? Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, in the name of Allah. So I asked a question at the beginning of the series, and this class is entitled Love, Growth, and Beauty in the Light of the Prophetic Way. May Allah bless also a dear sister here who's helped me even with the title of this and thinking of the blurb for it. So this is about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, a deep study of his prophetic character, of his persona, of the way he lived his life, of the way he showed up in his life, of the way he navigated the journey of life, because he was the best of the creation and a human being who treaded this path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, experiencing everything we experience. We want to study that to see how we can adapt that to our lives, how we can relate it back to our lives. So it's a relevant substance to all of us. And I want to begin it by asking a question about how, in your quest to really find out more about yourself, self-discovery, so to speak, how many of us are really struggled with that? How many of us beg and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for answers on really finding ourselves in this life, finding out where we are, what we need to do? Doubt is not a very comfortable thing to experience. And many people struggle with this and they don't know what they're doing in this life. In this journey, we're trying to find ourselves, find our story and location, right? And without understanding our story, where we came from, where we're going, the divine purpose behind our existence, even understanding the inside. You know, the amazing thing is that the closest thing to ourselves is the inside, the heart. But yeah, many people are alienated from their hearts, isn't it true? We're alienated from ourselves. Majority of people don't know themselves. There's actually a barrier between them and themselves. And you know how you know? When a person is not able to be human, in that moment, when they're displaying the worst aspects of their personality, the frightened parts of the personality that rejects you, that is cruel with you, that is constantly in a state of fear or a state of grief, that is constantly doubting, that is constantly being hard and difficult, right, towards others. You know what that state is? Alienation. This person apparently is alienated from others, but also alienated from their own core and humanity and capacity. They don't know how to tap inside of themselves. They don't even know themselves. They cannot process their emotions. They don't know anything. They're attaching to outward experiences, external experiences for internal fulfillment, because they don't know how to fulfill the inside. They don't even understand it. What a tragedy that there could be a barrier between you and your own self. And the self is the closest thing to you. Subhanallah. Talk about the power of Allah to veil the human being from themselves when they're blind. And there's nothing more difficult than blindness to the self. The question is, how do you tap into the inside? As they say, there's actually an ocean inside of your brothers, an ocean of capacities, ocean of treasures, and it's so deep. And one of the scholars said, you know, Islam itself, as well as the human inward reality, right? You in your core, the human being in their core, and Islam is like an ocean. No matter how you look at an ocean, any level of an ocean, it's beautiful. Isn't it true? You're sitting from the outside on the beach, you're looking at the ocean, it's beautiful. What about when you go inside and just put your face under the water, under the surface? Ooh, it's even more beautiful. Well, what if you do a deep dive? Ooh, you discover a whole world. What if you go deeper and deeper? Each layer of the ocean is even more beautiful. What am I trying to say? As you dig deeper, you discover wonders and more beautiful things. But on the surface, you're happy. Oh, you haven't penetrated. It's very difficult to penetrate. It's a lot of pressure. But for those willing to penetrate and dig deep, ooh, they're going to discover an amazing treasure. Treasure upon a treasure upon a treasure. Infinite, boundless. How many of us understand that Allah placed that in you and me? Ocean inside of us, and we just don't know how to tap into it. The capacities and the potentials, because we're staying at the surface and we're listening to everybody else, but not to the voice of Allah that is pointing us inside. How many of us would wish to tap into the inside, to really find ourselves, to find your purpose, where you are, what your life means to you, right? Putting together the pieces, it's hard. So the question is, what do you need? I actually say we need almost like a mirror. Somebody to mirror ourselves back to ourselves, kind of look at ourselves in the mirror and see ourselves better because we do not see ourselves. And this mirror is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There's no better mirror for ourselves, into ourselves, than Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because Allah sent them as that mirror for you and me. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent him as the most tangible, most concrete example of humanity, of you and me, at our top potential. Meaning that Rasulullah becomes the manifestation of the extent of your potential. And he comes to illustrate and show you your depth and what you can become. The most beautiful creature of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we desperately need him. Desperately need Rasulullah. Without him, we don't know ourselves. Even if we have the Quran, the ultimate source of legislation, we'll explain later, you need Rasulullah as your mentor in the journey. Otherwise, you'll actually misunderstand the Quran. And we'll explain it from the Quran. Why the walk of Rasulullah with you in your journey of self-discovery and growth towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is indispensable. You cannot afford not to have Rasulullah in your life. Impossible. Question is, in all honesty, how many of us here tonight feel that they're really deeply connected to Rasulullah? How many of us tonight feel that they really know him, that you really know Rasulullah? And how many of us take it a step further and ask themselves, do I really love Rasulullah? And what kind of love are we talking about is the question. We'll talk about this. We'll elaborate on it, inshallah, in the next session, next week. Really to love. And the consequences, the fruit of authentic, transcendental love, not just temporal, fleeting, passionate love that we've gotten used to, accultured to, socialized into. No. The love that Allah has intended. Experiencing that. Have you ever even experienced it? And the fruits of that. And the ripple effect of that on our life. Ooh, talk about opening up that ocean inside of us. Most of us don't even know how to walk that walk. And here is someone Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent us as the most amazing gift. The most amazing gift. To learn really how to love. We heard of needing to love Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That you need to love him more than yourself, more than your wealth, more than your family. But most of us struggle with that question, actually. You know the hadith on needing to love him to perfect your deen, to perfect your iman? I get a lot of questions about this. Like, what does it mean to love him more than myself? I don't know how to do that. We're going to explain it thoroughly, inshallah. You're going to arrive at the conclusion of why it's not just important to do this, how it actually will make you a better human being, a more loving human being. When you love Rasulullah at that level, but how do you love someone you actually do not know? Virtually impossible. Do you see why it is critical, vital, to not just learn about Rasulullah, to continually engage with Rasulullah for every second, minute, hour of our lives? We have to. Because it turns out loving Rasulullah is indispensable to our faith. Iman, faith, we struggle with Iman, right? How many of us, experience spiritual struggles of the highs and lows? Even the Sahaba experienced that. The Sahaba themselves experienced that. Because it's a human condition. But many of us are in the gutter. We don't even know what sweetness of faith is all about. Maybe our worship is all robotic. And it's empty. And we see the pain in our hearts and the aches in our hearts and the emptiness. How do we elevate our faith? Isn't that a question we all ask? I want to feel better in my faith, feel my heart is alive. It's like rekindled, that in the moment I love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then in the moment I'm attached to the Quran. How do I experience that? Because life is busy, overwhelming. And there's a lot of addictions that I'm maybe turning to for that temporary comfort, for that dopamine experience. Maybe I'm constantly on my social media to get the dopamine dose that I need to feel better, but then I'm miserable afterwards. How do I feel faith? How many of us have reflected on the fact that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you reflecting on him, you studying about him, you thinking about him, you making dua for him and making salawat on him and really engaging with him even though he's not in front of you, is actually a boost to your faith? In fact, he said this sallallahu alayhi wasallam in a beautiful hadith. And this hadith, if you have none but this hadith, it's enough for you. Enough for you to be here. Enough for you to make learning about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first and Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam the quest of your life, because we're nothing without them. We're not even human beings. And our faith is in the balance. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said in a beautiful hadith, ثلاثة من كن فيه وجد حلاوة الإيمان. 3 situations, 3 scenarios, 3 experiences is the better translation. 3 experiences, if you're in them, you're going to find not just faith. Here you go. The sweetness of faith. Ooh, that high pinnacle experience of faith when you're like experiencing the love of this faith, like the experiencing something delicious that you're eating. You know how much you would want to eat that delicious meal if you're hungry, and you hear the afterward, right? The craving of it, but also the appreciation and the relishing, right? Is the word, the relishing of the meal. You mean make sounds. Rasul Sallallahu used the same word, halawa. That this faith has an experience like that. You start saying, this is so sweet, it's filling me. My heart is full. I don't need anything else. Can we get to that level? Rasul Sallallahu answers. He says in 3 situations or experiences. Number 1, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that moment and his Rasul Sallallahu to be more beloved to you than anything else. If you're able to experience that, you're going to find that it's tasty. It's filling me. Number 2 is for you to love someone, somebody else, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Brother with a brother, sister with a sister. Even brothers towards sisters and sisters toward brothers. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke of the believing men and women being supporters of one another, loving one another, but in a halal way. And respecting the boundaries. Because if they're broken, what happens? It becomes a shaitanic form that wrecks everybody. Right? Upholding those lines. But that love for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when you experience it with somebody authentically, not for some other reason, not for agendas, not because you want something out of them or you want to use them. No. For the sake of Allah. We're going to have a whole session on that. This is just an opening, an intro to all of this. If you experience that with somebody, if Allah bless you to have a brother in your life, a sister in your life, that you can experience that with, you're going to find it sweetness of faith. And the third is for a human being to, the believer, to hate going back to a state of unfaith, unrighteousness, kufr, right? Of not having faith, to hate going back to that state of not being faithful, as or more than you would hate being thrown in the fire. Imagine somebody told you, I'm going to throw you in the fire. And the other thing is, losing your faith. You say, I'd rather be burned than lose my faith, because I know how that tasted like. If you're at that level, you're going to find the sweetness of faith. But did you notice? At the heart of it is loving Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But again, we can't love somebody we do not know. How do we start loving Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in an authentic way, in a real way, to connect with him? The subject matter of this, brothers and sisters, this whole halaqah series, this whole class, is to really learn in a deep way about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to get or attain that level of connection with him. And through that connection, we gain love for him, a true reverence and appreciation, and simultaneously start to actually gain beauty, start to grow as human beings and as servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All simultaneously kind of blended together. All these are our goals. We're going to learn about how he walked in this life. Again, how he traveled the journey, how he navigated the ups and downs. We're going to see Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, each session we're going to study this, the various roles he played in his life. How was he as a father? How was he as a son? How was he as a husband? How was he as a friend? How was he when he walked in the streets? How did he connect to people? How did he deal with his inside? Remember when we spoke of the inside of you? How do you connect with it? How do you deal with your own emotions? We have no example but the example of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the perfect example from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How did he cope with grief, with loss, with heartbreaks, with excitement and joy and celebrations? How did he deal with harm from the community? We're going to have a whole session on just harm, not from just the idolaters and the disbelievers, because he was insulted, he was choked, Foul language was used against him. He was called names day and night, day and night. But even his members of his own community in Medina, from the Sahaba, few. There was slander against his family, as you're aware. And some engage in it from the community. How did he deal with that? Would you imagine being placed in those situations? So we're going to learn about Rasulullah in a way that enables us to know how to cope with our own challenges and trials and hardships, our own emotions, and how to be in those roles that Allah put us in, whatever your roles right now, as a friend, as a son, as a daughter, as a future spouse. How are we going to deal with that? That we don't end up losing our marriages. And I can tell you, brothers and sisters, I deal with this so much. Broken marriages, broken relationships, so unnecessary. And it comes down to people not knowing what it takes, what these gifts are about. We're going to learn through Rasulullah, and this is for the brothers, what manhood is all about. There's a lot of debate out there about manhood. Isn't it true? What's a man, right? Not just in the gender kind of level type of discussion. We'll talk about that as well. But really, manhood. People are confused. Young Muslims are confused. That we have to listen to now Jordan Peterson and God knows who else telling us what a man is. But like, did we even look at Rasulullah? The profile of Rasulullah, ultimate manhood, sacred masculinity. We're going to learn, inshallah, through the study of Rasulullah and his family and his wives, what sacred womanhood is all about. Sacred, beautiful, as prescribed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not somebody out there telling us subjectively what a woman is, what a man is. We're going to learn authentically in the way of Rasulullah what gender interaction is all about. Gender roles and gender interactions. That we're able to walk that walk towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not violate others and violate ourselves. Because brothers and sisters, when we harm others and we harm ourselves, we suffer. Our relationships are broken. Ultimately, our marriages and friendships and community starts to break. This is serious stuff. How do I address all of this? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in his infinite mercy gave us Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as the perfected human being. Perfected, beautified, elevated, shaped by Allah's hand for the mission of helping you and me become better human beings and better servants of Allah and better fathers, mothers, husbands, wives, friends, community members, leaders, followers, how to walk, how to navigate. Wow. We wouldn't even know. We would have no clue without Rasulullah. You know how? We know. Look at the examples out there. Look at our lives. When we're not even thinking about Rasulullah, how many of us pause before we engage in an argument? Somebody is hurting you. Somebody, used foul language at you, offended you, insulted you. How many of us pause in the moment to think, what would Rasulullah do right now? There's a disagreement, discussion in a meeting, and people are jumping on each other. How many of us would pause and say, what would Rasulullah do? Guess what? It's documented. Documented. When you're about to feel angry and you're about to lash out at somebody, how many of us would pause and say, what would Rasulullah do? Turns out we have a full documented life. This is actually a miracle that every single detail of Rasulullah's life is documented authentically. This is amazing. Show me a single prophet of Allah whose life is documented like that. Impossible. You're not going to find it. Yet Allah placed Rasulullah in this life to experience all that you've experienced. All that you've experienced. He grew up, brothers and sisters, came into this world. By the way, he wasn't just sent from the heavens. No, he came into this world through the same means that you and I came into this world. Belly of a mother. And then he would have to be born as an orphan because his father just died before his arrival. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Had no hug of a father. Born as an orphan. Didn't see his mother for long because it was a tradition of the Arabs to send them out into the desert to be raised in the desert, to be purified and engage with Mother Earth and not be exposed to the distractions and materialism of the city. So what nurses would come and take them? And you know what Rasulullah what happened to him? The what nurses came to take the children, and nobody would look at Rasulullah. All the what nurses, because they knew his father is dead. And they were poor. They didn't want to take him. There was no money from his family. All ignored them. Can you imagine? Turning away from that nesma, from that breeze. It's in front of you. And yet there's this one woman who had no children. She couldn't find anybody. Halima, and her husband was looking at her like, oh, there's no child to take for us back into the desert. And they found Rasul by himself. He's like, okay, let's take him. It might be barakah. And they end up taking him and transformed their lives. And in those years he was in the desert, they see his mother, subhanAllah. And then later he'd come back to join his mother. And then at the age of 6, on a trip to Medina, to visit his uncles in Medina, her family. Can you imagine the trip from Mecca to Medina? How many people have taken by bus or plane? It's long. I know in the bus I struggle. It's like it's in a bus and I'm struggling. Like it took like whatever, in Hajj and Umrah, it's long, right? Now they have trains, mashallah. Right? It's like in case you're not comfortable, they have trains for you now, right? But it was a struggle. Can you imagine having to travel with your mother on a camel? Ayman was with them, who served the family. That's it. And he's 6. As soon as she finishes visiting, she steps out of Medina, develops a fever, and dies in front of his eyes. Dies in front of his eyes, brothers and sisters. Age of 6. Talk about trauma. I had no father to hug me in this life. No father. Orphan. In front of my eyes, in the desert, I see my mother die. And she had to be buried there. Can you imagine? And he's left with Ayman, the one who served them. SubhanAllah. Can you imagine the impact of that on a human being? How many of us would be in our culture right now, traumatizing, need therapy for the rest of their life, blah, blah, blah. You know where that goes, right? That is how Rasulullah was raised. Why would Allah put him through that? Because he's going to become the teacher of humanity. If he didn't feel your pain, if he didn't experience what an orphan went through, what pain, what trauma, what heartbreaks are all about, how is he going to connect with us? How is he going to help us heal and grow? He's going to talk to us from an ivory tower. You know people who talk to you from an ivory tower? Up on a pulpit, they have no connection to your life. They don't know what you've gone through. And they want to give you fatwas on it. Make sense? Opinions on it. You feel a disconnection right away. It's like, you don't know what I'm going through. Right? Imagine if Rasulullah was an angel. Because some of the kuffar of Mecca said, why don't you, Allah, send us? If this is a real religion, you should have sent us. If he's a real prophet, you should have sent us an angel. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, if I sent you an angel, what would you say? I cannot talk to an angel. So people are arguing out of just wanting to argue because they don't want to follow Rasulullah. But he said, send us an angel. Well, indeed, if you have an angel, you're not going to connect with an angel. You don't even speak their language. Angels don't get married. Angels are not orphans. Angels are not fathers and mothers, husbands and wives and children. Angels don't go to school to be students. Angels don't cry. They don't have pain and grief and fear. They don't have any of that. How are you going to connect with them now? Rasulullah was a template for all of us who went through what we go through. This is amazing, brothers and sisters. Talk about needing him in our lives. To learn about how much we need Rasulullah, you need to look no further than who he is to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The love that Allah has for him is sufficient to make you and me appreciate, revere, and really wanting to learn more about him, to love him. Because he is the most beloved to Allah. We know that someone from the Prophet spoke to Allah. Isn't it true? Spoke to Allah. That's Musa alayhi salam. We know that someone was entitled Khalil of Allah, the friend of Allah. Who is that? Ibrahim alayhi salam. Who is the beloved of Allah? The beloved. Allah loves His creation. There are levels of love. The most beloved creature, dear sisters, dear brothers to Allah, is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Can you imagine? Just pause and reflect on what that means. If we get away with, maybe not get away, if we ever attain the blessing of maybe feeling that Allah loves us, can you imagine? Well, actually, you'll be elevated in the moment. Somebody, a human being you love, and you find out that they actually think well of you. They really like you. Somebody important. How would you feel? Imagine if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves you. Now imagine if you're the most beloved in creation to Allah. What kind of a human being and a creature is that? Allah chose him from amongst the trillions and trillions of creation, including angels, jinn, human beings, and creation we don't even know about. Can you imagine the size of the heavens? What is that? The creation of Allah and the size. And Rasul is the one chosen to be the beloved of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to turn into the master of creation. Stated in a hadith. Sayyidul Khalq, the master, not just of human beings, everybody. That's his position, dear sisters, dear brothers. He's the closest creature to Allah. Can you imagine again the meaning of that? The closest creature to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the creature that knows Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the most. He's so beloved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Allah took his name, and it's Allah who named him. Muhammad sallallahu alayhi, say sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So what does Muhammad mean? From Hamd, Muhammad is the one who's praised, the praised one. He's so perfected by Allah, everything about him is perfectly beautiful, inside out, that he got the title, his title matches his personality and character, unlike many of us, right? How many Muhammads are there on earth? Astaghfirullah, may Allah comfort Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, wallahi, when he sees that. Because there are people carrying his names and committing crimes, right? Subhanallah. And it happens a lot that we carry names that don't match with our personality, our characters. But the names suggest nobility, goodness, generosity, kindness, and we have none of it. None of it. Rasulullah was the exact perfect manifestation, fulfillment of his own name, because his name was given by Allah, and it fulfills completely who he is. It's a reflection of who he is. And that name, look at how beloved he is to Allah. For those who question who Rasulullah is, because we do have, unfortunately, a segment, albeit small, amongst the ummah of Rasulullah that don't want to follow him. That say, I'm going to just look at the Quran and not bother with Rasulullah because I cannot even count on the hadiths. Hadiths are just sayings, we don't even know if they're authentic. And some, and I've come across this, who will say he's nothing but a prophet like the rest of the messengers. Muslims, no respect and reverence for Rasulullah. And guess what? His name, for those who say, well, he's like the other messengers. The name of Rasulullah is next to the name of Allah under his throne. مكتوب تحت العرش. Under the throne, imagine the throne is the pinnacle of all created, the created order of Allah subhanahu. The highest thing, throne of Allah encompasses all the creation. It's not an easy thing to say, it's just the throne of Allah. The throne of Allah is the greatest thing created in the created order other than Rasulullah. And underneath it, it says, La ilaha illallah Muhammadun Rasulullah. Just again, pause on that and the significance and the glory of belonging to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Rasulullah is so beloved to Allah, he's granted the highest station in the next world. So the heavens, much bigger than our world here, right? This is nothing but a grain in relation to the magnitude of the heavens. Has stations. Even Jannah, as we know, has 100 levels. So what's the highest level in the next world? It's called Al-Maqam al-Mahmud, related to the name of Rasulullah. Mahmud is actually one of his names. Praised as well. It has to do with praise. It's called the praised station. It has glory that is unimaginable. Bliss and sublimity that is unimaginable. In this highest, can you imagine what the highest station would look like in Jannah and in the heavens? This created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is given by only one creature, it's Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And we know very well that Allah permitted Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in the journey of the Mi'raj of the Ascent, which we'll cover inshallah as well in the series, and the implications and the meanings of that. He traveled on a journey where he went through the heavens, reached the utmost boundary of existence, marked by a tree called what? The low tree of the boundary of existence. There is a boundary marking the space of all the creation. Beyond it is the realm of Allah. Nobody enters there. And yet Rasulullah reached that highest point of existence and was allowed to penetrate it, to be in presence with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even Jibreel couldn't penetrate that. And he said, if I cross that point, I'll burn. But yet Rasulullah was permitted, the only creature. And he saw what he saw, and learned and what he learned, and he heard the voice of Allah, and came back to be with us. I don't know how he did that, right? It's like imagine going to an amazing place on this earth, mesmerizing, beautiful, every need of yours is fulfilled. And then a month later, it's like you have to leave and then go back to the University of Maryland. It's like, how do I do that, right? And I have to deal with professors again and tests and brothers and sisters that are bothering me, and blah, 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 and family. Oh, and maybe you'll be looking at everybody like, you know where I was? Do you know where I was? Right? I don't need this. Not Rasulullah came back to walk with humility to help us get there. And never saying, Allah, I don't want to go back. It's too painful. That's his character. We're going to study that character, dear brothers and sisters. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is he again? He is the creature he created for a purpose, for a mission. He himself is beloved to Allah, the most beloved creature, besides anything else, like without a need for anything else. But yet Allah created him for a purpose and a mission. And the mission is what? It's Allah's love for his creation, his intense rahmah and compassion. That he knew we need help. He created us to need that help, to need that care, to need someone to hold our hands, to walk the path to Allah, because Allah created you to be happy, brothers and sisters. But we don't know how to be happy. We hurt ourselves because Allah endowed us with the capacity to choose. The angels don't have this. It's a test. Allah doesn't want you to fail the test. On your own, in this jungle of life, we're going to lose it. We're going to miss our way. We're going to differ on every opinion. Every matter, we're going to differ on it. We're subjective. We're impressionable. We can easily be influenced by coercion, by desire. How often does desire ruin us? Right? Greed, etc. We cannot think straight nor be rational under the influence of desire. Who's going to help you? Pick you up when you're hurting. Literally pick your hands, and this person loves you so much. They say, I want you to arrive safely at your destination. Rasulullah, who literally was sent, brothers and sisters, to take us from darknesses to light. You know, darknesses represent everything dark in our lives, everything difficult. We're all struggling with darknesses inside, darknesses outside. The darkness of not being close to Allah, not knowing Allah. The darkness of emotions, the darkness of relationships that are broken. How do we get out of it? How do we know how to heal from it? Only Rasulullah sent by Allah to help you get out of it and heal and grow and find yourself. So he's the teacher, he's the mentor, he's the guide to take humanity and other creation, not just humanity, even the jinn, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And for that mission, you cannot just send anybody. Can you imagine what it needs, what is needed in terms of qualifications for someone to be endowed with the mission of teaching the creation of Allah, al-haq, the truth, to carry on their shoulders the mission of the heavens, to be the envoy, the messenger, not of a king and a queen on earth, the king of the heavens and the earth. Whoa, and you're being picked as his messenger. What qualities, what character, what heart, what soul does that person have to have? Just to kind of point you to who Rasulullah is. So Allah, for this enormous faithful mission, that is not just any other mission, this is the mission. He had to shape Rasulullah in a special way. He shaped him with his own hands, perfected him, beautified him, poured into him infinite beauty, infinite nur, light, infinite rahmah, compassion. His well inside is bigger than any human well you can imagine. Poured it all into his heart, into his soul, perfected and purified his vision, his hearing, his heart, his soul, his limbs, his speech, his tongue. Everything about him inside is beautified and perfected human being, shaped by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the scholars say his heart, well, because of everything about him was different. He had the most special heart, soul, eyes, vision, understanding, speech. Everything about him was the most special, most perfect. Everything. Not a blemish on him. Can you imagine a human being lived the journey of this life in Mecca and in Medina? Not one time did he say something foul. One. You cannot catch him. One time. Can you imagine? Not one time did he hurt anybody. Not one time did he insult anybody. Well, not even one time. Hurt anything. Any creature, not just a human being. One time. Not one time, subhanAllah, brothers and sisters, did he slip the way we slip. Not one time. Yet he was a human being, perfect by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who went through all these experiences that we spoke about. Because Allah was caring for him. And he had to be perfected to become the role model for all of us, the teacher, the mentor, and equipped him with a special heart to care for every one of us. So he wasn't just a teacher who just came to give you a curriculum. We're really, right? We're used to teachers who come and give us a curriculum, tell us what we need to learn, give us instruction, and say, Salamu alaikum. That's what we're used to. In all honesty, I want to ask you, which teachers in your life do you remember the most? And you say, I remember that one teacher. Was it because they mesmerized you with astrophysics or computer science, or the way they taught us about European history was just amazing? Is that why I remember them? Honestly, no. Why do I remember that one teacher from elementary? I'm talking about the good ones here. Maybe the 1 or 2 or 3 maximum, right? Why? Can somebody tell me why? One reason. Typically. Nobody likes any teachers here? What is it? Give me a top reason for why you remember somebody fondly. A teacher. Top reason. Most common sense reason. Connected with me, exactly. Maybe knew me. What is it? Empathetic, right? No, you want to say something else? I know I have probably a long list of, what is it? Enthusiasm, exactly. Passion, enthusiasm, right? Do you notice all of them have to do with how they inspired you, how they connected with you, how they acknowledge you, how they care for you? This is essential in a teacher, brothers and sisters, in a real mentor that changes you, that transforms you to the point where you remember them. They made you better because they hit your heart, not just your intellect. They hit you here. And that's important. So what kind of a heart does the Rasul have to hit everybody that way? Not just 10, 20 people. The creation of Allah, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Very special. Very extraordinary. We're going to talk in the next few minutes about some other dimension to understand that impact and who he was, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. In terms of his impact, Rasul, just to kind of summarize, because we're not going to speak, this is an intro, to give you a taste. Rasul would come to earth, and we spoke briefly about what world he came into, and his struggles as an orphan. And later in his life, he would be hurt, he would be slandered, he would be insulted. Rasul would bury all of his children but one. All of them but Aisha. He had to witness his own children die in front of him. Buried all of them, brothers and sisters. We cannot even imagine burying one person of our family. Imagine the heartbreak. Buried all of his children, except who? Fatima. You know how much the creation of Allah loved the Rasul? Fatima was only, I believe, 23 years of age. As soon as he died, she couldn't take it. 6 months later, she passed away. Most likely because of what she experienced after losing him. He wasn't normal. People couldn't fathom the idea of living without him. Well, how did he touch them? That's the question. What kind of a mentor and teacher and a guide is that? What kind of a heart did he have? What lesson is he teaching us about how you impact others? This is the sunnah. This is the way of Rasulullah. This is amazing, brothers and sisters. He comes into this earth 600 years after the last prophet. Who was that? Exactly, Isa. I'm hearing a few, alhamdulillah, 600 years. Initially, they were monotheists. Guess what? By the time 600 years have passed, you can count them on your hand, the monotheists on this earth. Spiritually barren earth. Drought of spirituality, of connection to Allah, of knowing Allah. They have all kinds of other false religions. He comes among the Arabs, and Arabs were worse. Here they are steeped in darkness, real darkness, tribes that are fighting each other. steeped in ignorance, jahiliyyah, called jahiliyyah, that the man, there was a preference for boys, that as soon as the wife delivers a baby, they check the gender, and if it's a girl, guess what they do? The pit is prepared already. The woman delivers the baby next to the pit. They check the baby. If it's a girl, they put her in the pit. Can you imagine? That's their world. وَإِذَا الْمَوْءُودَةُ سُئِلَتْ. Because our religion is a religion of compassion, virtue, but also adl, justice. Allah put it in the Quran. On the day when the maw'uda, the buried girl, will be asked, with what crime, for what crime were you buried? She's gonna stand on that day, and justice will be restored to her. Every single one of them. But that's the community he was brought into. SubhanAllah, around the Kaaba, brothers and sisters, they used to go around the Kaaba naked. Naked. This is them at the time. He had to now call them to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Brothers and sisters, within 20 years, these heterogeneous, divided, disunited tribes of Arabs, steeped in ignorance, were transformed into the ummah, the community of iqra, of read. They were illiterate, mostly. The ummah of character, the ummah of nobility, the ummah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, taken from the worship of the creation and idols to the worship of Allah. And through that, and the presence of Rasulullah, they were sandwiched between two powerful civilizations, the Romans and the Persians. Nobody could compete with them militarily. In all aspects of civilization, these Arabs went there, crushed both of them. It was like unheard of, unknown. How did that happen? Then they would go on, after Rasulullah's departure, the faith would spread east and west. Through what? Through what? Military? This, that? No. Faith and character. These were the same people who were burying their daughters, brothers and sisters, alive, steeped in darkness. They would go on to transform the world and establish a civilization like no other. And they became the teachers of humanity, even though they couldn't read or write. Within a few decades, brothers and sisters, this has happened, that they would go into Europe and civilize Europe, while Europe was in darkness. This is the effect and the power of Quran and Rasulullah. This is amazing. Unheard of, unprecedented. How about on a personal level? How did that happen? Because Rasulullah changed each person he interacted with. Each person. So Allah says regarding Rasulullah, Inna a'tainaka al-Kawthar. We'll talk about Kawthar. Kawthar is actually literally a river in paradise, given as a gift to Rasulullah, symbolic of his status. Not everybody gets that river. It's given to him. But Kawthar in Arabic also means what? This is a profound word. When Allah says, I give you Kawthar, it's not just the river. Kawthar is abundance, infiniteness, plentitude, allotness. Of what? Of everything. Of character, of beauty, of personality, of strength, of nobility, of humility, of compassion, of love, of faith, of sacrifice, of everything. Everything. Not just he has a portion of it. No. Infinite. Beauty. It's like no bounds. A lot of it. A lot of it. And reputation and effect. That his name, brothers and sisters, would spread across this. Right now, how many of us Muslims are here on earth? Close to 2 billion. Brothers and sisters, every second we live, Rasulullah's name is being mentioned. This is Kawthar, by the way. Despite the few people who are like slandering him, insulting him, trying to use offensive cartoons on him, against him, blah, 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 all that stuff, irrelevant. Doesn't diminish a thing from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Kawthar. That the jinn know him and love him. So the Sahaba adored him, brothers and sisters, and I want you to pay attention to that. Because one of the objectives we have is going to be around the question of also how you impact others around you. What's authentic love? How will people be moved by you? If you want to teach people, take them to a higher place. How would you affect them? How would you influence? We're going to talk and break that down, learning from Rasulullah. But let me show you the effect. The Sahaba loved Rasulullah so much before they became the masters of creation. and the teachers, they had to connect with him to learn and grow. Whenever he did wudu, the companions would fight, wait for him making wudu in front of them, and would fight over the water that remained from the wudu. What kind of love is that? That they would be looking, if a hair falls from his beard, they would be fighting over who takes it. One time he goes into a house, I believe, I'm not sure if it was Anas ibn Malik, and his mother was there, and they saw the sweat on the forehead of Rasulullah, and it said that the sweat looked like pearls. Can you imagine? The droplets looked like pearls. This is his beauty. We'll talk about his beauty next time, inshallah, how he actually looked. His mother brought a little cup to see if she can collect the sweat on his face. And he looked at her, he knows her by name, I forgot her name. He says, well, what are you doing? She says, oh, Prophet Allah, I want to collect it because we mix your sweat with our perfume. Because it smells so beautiful. There's no musk like it. This is their love for him, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. A woman in the Battle of Uhud, just to show you what his presence in their lives meant. In the Battle of Uhud, this woman was accompanied by her father, her brother, and her husband. All of them were martyred. They died. The Sahaba wanted to report the news to her. They didn't know how to do that. They came to her and they said, we sadly, want to report to you, sadly, that your father is dead, your brother is dead, and your husband is dead. Guess what her answer was? What happened to Rasulullah? They're like, your father is dead, your husband is dead, your son is dead. She said, what happened to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? She didn't care. They said, don't worry about Rasulullah, he's okay. She said, I don't believe you, show him to me. I want to see him. They took her to Rasulullah. Finally, she saw that he was okay. She said, alhamdulillah. She said, no calamity on earth is a calamity if Rasulullah is well. If he's well, there's no calamity. Even if it was losing my husband, losing my father, losing my son. She was actually relieved to see him alive. That's all that mattered. Doesn't mean she didn't love her family, though. She actually loved them more, right? But look at the patience that she had now through loving Rasulullah, the beauty of showing up in a trial through loving Rasulullah, but that's what he meant to them. They couldn't imagine life without him, let alone imagining Jannah without him. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, one day his father was not a believer. His father took Shahada, became Muslim. They went to Abu Bakr and they noticed he was crying. He wasn't crying out of joy. They said, Abu Bakr, why are you crying? Your father just became Muslim. And he's crying from grief. He said, why are you sad? Like, why are you crying? He said, I wish it was the uncle of Rasulullah, Abu Talib, because I knew how much Rasulullah loved him. I would have rather, if his uncle became Muslim, to make Rasulullah happy than my own father. That is incredible, unimaginable love and adoration. He prefers somebody else being Muslim than his own father, just to please Rasulullah, because his heart meant everything to Abu Bakr. One of the companions went to run an errand for Rasulullah. He came back and he was sad and crying. Again, the caring, compassionate Rasulullah. He would never leave anybody with a tear and not pay attention to them and wipe it. He said, why are you crying? And he's giving them full attention. He did this with everybody. Everybody felt special around Rasulullah. Very special. As if nobody else existed but them in the life of Rasulullah. He said, why are you crying? He said, oh, Prophet of Allah, I was away from you for a few hours and I couldn't take it. I was not happy. I was sad to miss you for a few hours in my day. And then I remembered to myself, when we leave this world, where are you going to be in Jannah? Maqam al-Mahmud, right? The highest with the messengers of Allah. And where am I going to be? How? And I imagine Jannah without you. I became sad. Pay attention. Jannah wasn't Jannah for him anymore if he didn't have the company of Rasulullah. Rasulullah was silent until a verse was revealed in which Allah answered this young man by saying, وَمَنْ يُطِعِ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ فَأُولَٰئِكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِمْ مِنَ الصِّدِّيقِينَ وَالشُّهَدَاءِ وَالصَّالِحِينَ. Verse 1 of the Quran. What is it? من النبيين والصديقين والشهداء والصالحين وحسن أولئك رفيقا. Allah answered by saying, whoever obeys Allah and the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then there surely will be joined with the messengers of Allah, with the martyrs, with the righteous, with the truthful. Don't worry. Another hadith of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, because the Sahaba were concerned, and one of them said, "Oh Prophet of Allah, what do we say to somebody who loves the righteous and the messengers, but they cannot be with them because they cannot do their deeds?" You know what Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam answered him with? Al-mar'u ma'a man ahab. Don't worry. The person shall be gathered with those he loves. He's like, for real? Like, really? He said, yes. Promise of Allah. He went back to report it to the Sahaba. It is said that that day was like a day of Eid for them. Because they recognized they cannot do what Rasulullah does. But yet, by virtue of loving him, we can be eternally with him in Jannah. Now it's Jannah. This is the effect. This is what he meant to them. That even the mountain loved Rasulullah. Imagine a mountain got affected by him. This is an authentic hadith. They're walking by Jabal Uhud, the mountain of Uhud. I'm sure you've seen it in Umrah or Hajj. And Rasulullah looks at it and he says, this is a mountain that loves us and we love it. Like, real love, like not like metaphoric, I love this tree. No. Real relationship. The mountain loves Rasulullah. That Rasulullah one day in a hadith, he put stones in his hand in a halaqah, sitting in a halaqah with Abu Bakr and Umar, and I believe Uthman ibn Affan was with them. And he put stones in his hand in front of everybody. The stones started to glorify Allah. They heard a sound from it, glorifying Allah. So as soon as it touched his hand, it became close with Allah. And he put the stones in the hand of Abu Bakr and did the same. And then in the hand of Umar, he wanted to show them connection with earth, with a stone that can love you, because it was loving also Abu Bakr and Umar. How did that happen? So is that possible? You might say it's like, this is for Rasulullah. No, we're going to talk about this. How to actually connect to earth in a real relationship of affection, of compassion, of love, and there's a resonance. Brothers and sisters, Islam is amazing. It'll transform completely your understanding of the world you're in. Completely. You start to access other dimensions. We'll have a whole session on that, inshallah. This is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam again. His grandchildren loved him, that they would jump on him while he was leading Salah, and he wouldn't even move. We know the hadith on that. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is leading a Salah. Imagine this. Leading a Salah. Just to show you what his heart was. This is Islam. This is faith. This is his compassion. He's prostrating, making sujood. A whole community is behind him in Salah in Medina. His grandchildren come into the masjid, they see their grandfather. Guess what they did? They would run towards him right away. How many of us would just run towards our grandparents or daddies and mommies if they're leading Salah and there's 10 people behind them? Maybe not, right? Because the consequences are not going to be pleasant, maybe, right? I'm included, by the way. They know what they'll get. Love, even in his Salah, they're kids. They don't know any better. They jumped on his back. Rasulullah, when he felt them and he heard their voice, he knew it was Hassan and Hussein. Guess what he did? He just shook them off, right? Just as I would do. Or many of us like, not now. So how can you, even if you're praying by yourself, there's a lot of people behind me and they're not going to know if something happened to me. It's like, I got to at least get him off my back. Even if gently, right? Nope. He stayed in his sujood as long as they were on his back. A whole crowd is behind him, also in sujood. Do you think they know what's going on? They had no clue. And they clearly were worried. Why is this sujood taking 10 minutes, right? Wallah, this hadith, we just need to pause at it and just think, what was this character of Rasulullah? They get off his back on their own. Rasulullah gets up, does his tajahhud, Assalamu alaikum, Assalamu alaikum. Everybody gets out of their sujood, like, what happened? Rasulullah says, okay, finally we heard this voice, alhamdulillah, right? He said, Allahu Akbar. They were worried sick. They went to him, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, said, Prophet Allah, what happened? You were in sujood and we didn't hear a voice, we were worried, something happened to you. And it took a long time, and what happened? He's like, no problem. It's just my grandchildren on my back. Can you imagine if somebody told like, that's it? And you're like, it's not a big deal. He's teaching them a lesson. Yeah, they're important. No, don't worry. Just my grandchildren. So for him, it was business as usual. He wasn't like, oh my, what am I going to do right now? It was natural, beautiful reaction to his grandchildren in his back. They needed love. They needed play. Even in his salah, I'm going to entertain them and not move for as long as they need to be pleased, and then get off his back. How many of us would think that way, brothers and sisters? This is faith. This is Islam. This is how much his grandchildren loved Rasulullah. Fatima loved him, adored him. The rest of his children. That's Rasulullah. Imagine how he treated his own daughter. Whenever he saw her, she comes into the room. He gets up, kisses her, and he calls her, kisses her on her forehead. Can you imagine the effect of that? Like on your daughter, kissing her forehead, acknowledging her. That's a father. How did he treat his wife as a husband? We're going to talk about all of this. But this is the special love that the companions, the creation around Rasulullah, this is how much they loved him. Then even the tree, and we're going to talk about that incident and break it down. When the time of, about talking about experiencing a living love, we're going to talk about how did you reach a point where a tree is crying over you? A tree, the trunk of a tree is crying over you because it misses Rasulullah. What kind of an impact is that? We'll talk about all of this, but I wanted to just end with this. This is the effect. This is the love. This is the experience of those who were touched by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he wasn't just sent for them, brothers and sisters. He was sent for all of us. Let me wrap up with this. There's a lot more I couldn't get to, but inshallah, next time we'll get to it. We're going to talk next time about what qualities do you need as a mentor, as a teacher, to do this, to do what you heard, to have such an impact on those around you that they become so transformed, beautified, that they go on to change earth. It's not normal. How did he deal with them? How did he deliver the message to them? What qualities did he have for that purpose? And what are the functions of prophethood that Allah himself stated? We're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about, inshallah, also the beauty of Rasulullah and how to connect with him, inshallah. That's at least in the coming session. But let me wrap up with this. Rasulullah wasn't just sent to a group of people. He was sent to the creation, including you and me. Our need for him is most important. It's like our need for him is something you cannot live without, right? The need for us, for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to be in our lives, brothers and sisters, is second to none. We cannot learn about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We cannot understand the Quran. We cannot refine our characters. We cannot understand how to navigate life without Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But it turns out, it's not just about a teacher that gives you a curriculum. We actually need a relationship and a connection with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The question though becomes, how do you connect with somebody you don't see? Let me share with you a couple of things about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to show you how he's already connected to you. But there's a veil, and when it's on our hearts, we cannot feel his connection to us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, "Ar-Rasulu awla bil mu'minina min anfusihim." Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Allah says, he's closer to the believers than they are to themselves. This is a very deep meaning. He's closer to you than yourself, all the believers. It means he knows each and every one of you. Cares about you, even though he's not a father to us. Allah said, he was not a father to any of you. Don't take him as a father. No, but a fatherly figure who knows all of his children. The entire flock, from his time until the end of time, are known to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah stated, and let me show you further what he sallallahu alaihi wasallam said before his death, as a message to all of us, for those who are not feeling his presence or his relevance to our lives. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam went to visit the martyrs of Uhud, including his own uncle, his 7-year-old, that were martyred in Uhud because of a mistake of a group of people in fighting among the Muslims, who didn't listen to Rasulullah. 7 people end up getting killed. We'll talk also about how he handled that. His own uncle Hamza ends up being slaughtered, chewed up, and Hind bint Utbah takes out his liver and chews it. How would he deal with that? Right? Talk about forgiveness, right? And patience. Rasulullah is visiting them. On his way back home, he's accompanied by some of the companions, and he started to tear up. And they're asking, "Oh, Prophet Allah, what's up? You're sad, you're crying." And they thought it was the martyrs, perhaps. He said, "No." He's answered with a couple of words. I miss my brothers. I just miss my brothers. So they were confused. He said, "Oh, Prophet Allah, here we are. We're your brothers. We're amongst you. What do you mean you're missing us?" He said, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, "You are not the brothers I'm referring to. You're my friends." Then they asked him, "Who are your brothers?" He said, "My brothers are people, believers who come after me, after my death. They believed in me without ever seeing me, without ever seeing me." And he's thinking about you, brothers and sisters, and crying over you. That is not a normal heart. Allah gave him a heart to recognize, acknowledge, and know each of the Muslims by name. His spirit is alive, brothers and sisters. Even though his body is gone, Rasulullah stays on in his spirit and his soul, and I can demonstrate it to you. And to show you that further his connection to you already in Salah, when you sit for tashahhud, what do you say? Let's repeat it. At-tahiyatu lillah wa salawatu wa tayyibat. And then what's next? Assalamu alayka ayyuha nabiyyu wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alayna ala ibadillah salihin. Ashhadu an la ilaha. And then Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali. Every salah, every time you sit down, at least the first part you have to say. Translate it for me. Tahiyatu lillah, what does it mean?
Tahiyatu means hello.
Greetings to Allah. Was-salawat, and the prayers. Wat-tayyibat, and the good ones to Allah. Then what do you say next? Salamu alayka ayyuha nabi. What does salamu alayka mean?
Peace be upon you. Yeah, like you're talking about.
Yeah, which, by the way, is this like the third person? Like I forgot which one. Second person. So you're talking in the second person to Rasulullah. Now, if he's not in front of you, what should you say? Salamu. Exactly. Alayhi. You put a ha because he's not present. The ha is the third person, I guess. Third person. You say on it, on him, on her. They're not there. You don't say Salamu alayhi, Safiyullah. You're like, I'm here, bro. Right? You don't say alayhi. You say alayka. But Rasulullah is not here. Why are you saying it in the second person? Salamu alayka ayyuha nabiyyu. Subhanallah. This is powerful. Allah's having you repeat it as if he's in front of you. Establish a connection with him. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And he said in the hadith, not a Muslim who greets me except that Allah will give me my soul back to greet him or her back. Like literally in that moment, he's saying, Alaykum as-salam, rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Acknowledging you, talking, second person to you. This is amazing. How many of us would skip that? What's next? Where's the pizza? Right? Seriously, this is talk about why Salah is not transforming us. You were just talking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam because you need that connection for you to grow and become beautified and find bliss and fulfillment and peace. Brothers and sisters, Allah is already having us do things to establish a connection with Rasulullah and a relationship. He knows you, he sees you, he hears you, and he's greeting you back. And then you conclude before Salamu Alaikum with what? Remembering also Rasulullah with salah on him. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad kama sallayta ala Ibrahim. You're sending peace and prayers upon him the way Allah did it. Because Allah himself sent his salah on him. So he's asking the believers, send salah on him. Next time we'll talk about what's the significance of that. Why should I do salah on Rasulullah? Why should I remember him that much? Turns out you cannot engender love for him without remembering him a lot. Impossible. But it's a genuine, mindful, real, authentic, in-the-moment connection. Not just robotic language that doesn't leave a trace in your heart, like talking to somebody. You know how we feel when somebody's talking to us and they're not there. What's going on, Omar? Or Omar's talking to me and you're like, yeah, sure. You're like, Brother, here. Like, yeah, sure, I'm here. And you know I'm not here. It doesn't feel good. You don't feel connected and you feel disrespected. But what if a connection happens? The most amazing thing happens. When you can connect in the moment with somebody, right? Ooh, powerful things happen. Can you imagine connecting with Rasulullah in just that moment? In that moment, we say, "Assalamu alayka ayyuhan nabi," and you just pause. Say, to imagine him answering you. Do you think your heart will be the same? That's when you start to feel faith, sweetness of faith, presence with Rasulullah, and it will change you for sure. You'll be healed. We'll talk about the evidence of that, inshallah, next time. Let me wrap up, inshallah. This is why we're studying this. This is an intro. Inshallah, the plan is to start every Tuesday 6. We'll go for the hour, inshallah, including questions, bi'idhnillah. So make sure you commit to this, come with intentions. We're going to study not biographically. We're going to select episodes from the life of Rasulullah, displaying how he navigated the journey, discussing his beauty, his character, his persona, how he affected people, how he navigated emotions and relationships, how he served in the various roles in his life so that we can now serve in those roles. We can be ready for our relationships because the potential is inside of us, brothers and sisters, and Allah is looking. And we have to please Allah. And this journey is going to be over. It's only a matter of time. And the gift is given to us to really become better. You cannot make it on your own. And it's not just mere knowledge. Just remember that. It's not just a curriculum, you'll learn it and you move on. No. You need the relationship for your faith, for your growth, for you to get to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah made Rasulullah an indispensable part of your journey to Him. These are the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why we live Him. We leave with a few action items. Ready for them, inshallah? Ready? Okay. It is reported, actually, from the scholars, including Imam Malik and others, whenever they used to actually mention Rasulullah, many of them used to cry. Like if they mention a hadith or something, Imam Malik would lose his voice. Like it starts cracking. And that they could not understand him. Many of the scholars used to actually make wudu before uttering his name. Can you imagine? This is respect. So let us do this next time. You come here for Salah. When you make the wudu, come here with having made wudu with intention to pray, to be in the musalla, but also because you want to hear about Rasulullah. Can you imagine the condition of your heart? You're cleansing yourself to be with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to learn about His beloved. Brothers and sisters, if you can do that, watch what will happen to your heart. It'll be ready to receive, inshallah. Number 2, from now make dua that Allah puts in your heart the love of Rasulullah and His love. Ya Allah, grant me your love and love of Rasulullah and the love of the righteous. Wallahi, if we don't feel it, make dua for it. If it matters to you, you'll be making dua for it. Oh Allah, grant me your love, the love of Rasulullah, love of His family too, and the love of the righteous. That even if I'm weak, I can't do their actions. I know that, Ya Allah, you promised that those who love someone will be with them. Makes sense? And ask for a drink from His honorable hand on the day of judgment that He knows you. And finally, make salah on Rasulullah. Between now and then, every day commit to a number. Say today, I'm going to make 100 salawat on Rasulullah. Minimum verses. We'll talk next time about why this practice will change your heart and your soul. Bi'idhnillah, inshallah. It's all next time. We'll see what we can get to. Bi'idhnillah. Next Tuesday, we're going to start actually delineating all of this and really digging deep into the life of Rasulullah. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless and accept from all of us. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us His love and the love of Rasulullah and the love of the righteous. Ask Allah to enable us through this journey of learning to grow and fulfill our potential in the way He intended for us. So ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us among His best of servants. So ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to endow our hearts with nur, with compassion, with faith, with righteousness, and to make us navigate our journeys of life in a way that pleases Him. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the companionship of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the next world, to make us known to Him, to grant us a drink from His honorable hand, and to grant us His companionship in Jannat al-Firdaus. We ask Allah to make us merciful and kind and compassionate with each other, to honor and respect each other, and to make us really a community of deep bond for His sake. Allahumma ameen, Allahumma ameen, wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad. وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Inshallah, please, inshallah, join us next time, Tuesday, بإذن Please make the intention. Assalamu alaikum. And inshallah, I'll be here till Maghrib for a couple of questions, Amr, or comments, inshallah.
One thing to add to like the action items that you listed is like, this is like one thing that Sheikh said, try your best to relieve any emotional like baggage that you have from the stress of the dunya, because you can leave space that helps you leave space in your heart to feel that love with the Prophet ﷺ and loving Allah and so on. So your heart is still occupied with the dunya and the hem that's in the dunya, the worries of the dunya. You're not going to have much space or room left to focus on the love of Rasul ﷺ.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Jazakallah khair, Amr. And you know what? It's a battle. It's a struggle, right? It's like, how do you? The only thing I would add to this to help us get there, because it's hard to empty it of this world, is that the more time you spend remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, here's what happens. You're going to actually start to find your heart detaching from the things you used to feel attached to. Because Allah's powerful. So it's not just you. You think, how do I get rid of my love and for these addictions and this stuff that is busy me and my anxiety? It's hard. Guess what? La hawla wa la quwwata. It's Allah's power. And when you show an effort with Allah by remembering Him, doing actually dhikr, Quran, just take a step further. One additional step. And then you make salawat on Rasulullah and learn about Him. And my goodness, Allah will start to change your heart to hate the things that you used to attach to and fall in love with Allah and His Rasul. It starts to fill your heart that you don't even care. Because otherwise, our passions don't allow us to do that. If you notice. So you need just to make the effort with Allah, Wallahi, minimal effort sometimes. Allah will show you wonders in your heart. You start to feel it. Jazakallah khair. That's actually a beautiful thing, but it's in the spiritual dimension. This whole idea of Allah changing you inside to help you overcome your own desires, own nafs, own occupations with the world. Not that we're now divorced from the world, but you're not as attached to it anymore. Beautiful point, Jazakallah. Any other thing, inshallah, before Maghrib? Or questions on the plan? And inshallah, each week, inshallah, the MSA will send out the title or the tagline, inshallah, for the topic for the following week, bi'idhnillah. So as soon as I finalize, inshallah, for next week, you'll hear, inshallah, from us. But each week we'll focus on an aspect or two from the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in a real, practical, relevant way, bi'idhnillah. جزاكم الله خير. بارك الله فيكم. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا. بارك الله فيكم إن شاء الله. Till next time. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.